freight in an abolitionist's office in Philadelphia to escape the clutches of slavery. His words upon exit from the box were apparently, "How do you do, gentlemen?" He then fainted. Brown was a highly devout Christian, and upon recovery he sang a 38-line hymn of thanksgiving. Following a stint as a prominent abolitionist speaker, Brown was forced to flee America's fugitive slave law of 1850. It was in England, the birthplace of liberty, where he kick-started his career in show business with a new English wife and his willing children. He dabbled in hypnotism and performed under the stage name Professor Henry Box Brown, but never actually joined the faculty of a university. Brown's self-promotion following his freedom drew criticism on several fronts. His fame meant that further attempts to send slaves via post to free states were thwarted. Online sources, Wikipedia, declare that Brown also made no attempt to buy the freedom of his original wife and children, whose sale to another slave owner was originally the emotional trigger for his escape. Brown's box then became a symbol of freedom, but was rendered defunct as a viable means of escape through its symbolic status. Brown continued to use the prominent motif in his magic shows, which further abstracted the meaning of the box. This show is an attempt to make sense of my time in Philadelphia. It involves sounds that I've recorded, words and turns of phrase that I've adopted while living here. And it draws abstractly on many things I've seen, read, researched and experienced. I wanted to read these poems while inhabiting a box, hanging from an old steel girder in a former warehouse, to relive Brown's experience of fear in a similarly sized wooden crate, and to reenact and retell his story in a context that itself is symbolic of Philadelphia's manufacturing decline and the recycling of such environments, utilising the old girders and pulley systems left over from when this building was used for far less noble pursuits. Henry appears in many of these poems in some form, hijacking their stories, mainly gratuitously. His box appears, as do words from his autobiography and from historians and abolitionists of the time, through wrong numbers, chance meetings in the street, telepathy and coincidence. What is best for Labushka? One of the mysteries of hospitalization is the frank beauty of this young nurse, Labushka. Taken from her simple, coal-worshipping forebears at a young age, highly trained to love and nurture the burly, bloody soldiers. You can hear her panting in the airing cupboard with the amputees. You can see her drizzling ice over their chests in the heat of the afternoon sun, when the air is like an underground car park. You can smell her polishing the director's bed knobs on Sunday late mornings while he takes his coffee and conservative newspaper. You can brush past her in the corridor if you know how to act casual. You can taste her if you tell her you will take her away from all this, to roll disco balls in endless fields of corn, shoot crabs to jagged pieces at pistol ranges, score saffron and bubble tea in Chinatown, pressing and warming her little hands under the table, her thirsty eyes in your thirsty eyes, your hearts beating as fast and hard as fighting dogs. This one's called Keeping Me Away From My Novel. It's about bowling, my favourite pursuit. And actually, I wanted to have the recorded sound of a strike to just play repeatedly through my sound recorder, but I wasn't able to make a strike, so like it's like the most pure sound of success is the sound of 10 Skittles or pins. Just, you know, I would like it to accompany every major life decision I make or every sort of success that comes to me. Try as we might to evade the doorman, he intercepted us like a Pac-Man at the door and demanded evidence of our existence. We drew our knives and he examined them with obvious interest. At the desk we had a little chat with the boss. He was happy to let us do what we liked. We chose the heaviest balls, the largest finger holes, and threw as many of them down the stairs as we could. Richard bought a drink from the bar and soaked a pretty young girl. We cheered and adjusted our crotches at her pretty young expense. A magpie had become stuck up in the glass ceiling, and a professional marksman was attempting to shoot it down. We jogged his arm. The magpie stared down at us and cleared its throat. We aimed again, the glass splashing and falling. Suddenly the sound reminded Richard, John and Thomas of something great and rhythmic. They reeled off into the lanes, tripping on errant pins and people, gaping and whooping to life's gyrating trajectory, which is what the lyrics were saying. Bloody Marys were 2 for 1. Carrie and I went home at around 10:30. Carrie had to work the next day, and I was eager to get back to my thrilling novel, the one I was finding increasingly difficult to put down. Well, this next one's got some French in it, and I hesitate before reading it out and presuming a greater knowledge of French. It's not entirely in French, it's just, it's got some sort of important bits in, which I'll translate if necessary. It's called Au revoir, Sophia, which means everything. Which means goodbye. It's a love poem. Au revoir, Sophia. I met you in a bar, and we tried to talk in French about Andrei Konchalovsky. I bought you a drink, and you smiled a few times, and I got drunk. 2 weeks later, you were in a supermarket buying cigarettes. I had potatoes and disposable razors, so we got talking. You came to a barbecue at our place and we burnt a lot of cardboard in a big pile. An old lady stared out at us from the block of flats over the road, holding signs and numbers to the window as though held captive. Then we went to my room, and it went comme ci, comme ça. Afterwards we sat up and smoked cigarettes. I trailed my fingers back through your pussy with my stub and kissed you softly on the side of the face. Sophia, you're not dead yet. You still have 9,000 breakfasts left to eat, 2 children to rear, 12,000 miles to drive, 6 jobs to quit, 7 guinea pigs and 3 goldfish to kill, around 3,000 odd fucks to do, and a car accident left to look forward to. I'm not going to see you again ever, so au revoir, Sophia. This one's called The Primary Odours. It's a true story about something that happened to me in Philadelphia, and a man who calls himself Lord Whimsy. It's called The Primary Odours. The eminent botanist, Lord Whimsy, recommended an ice-free parlour on 4th and Market. The colours and flavours have been sourced from local plants and animals. His lovely wife, Helen, whose rich curls and wonderful teeth were the talk of the town, was, incidentally, involved in developing a device to capture and replicate odours using a variety of unusual chemicals, a powerful laptop, and a small paper bag. It turns out that odour, like colour, can be assembled from a base set of primary odours. I set about guessing what these might be, but he said, light acres from guessing what they might be. Bob, the distinguished architect and competent botanist, was already at the ice cream shop with Helene. Helene bestowed a frightening smile on us, and Bob returned to the subject of demolition. My cell phone had developed a diagonal crack that over the course of the conversation had swollen and now shimmered engagingly. As Bob pronounced the word effulgent, it came to life at once. Buzzing furiously, a voice came from the earpiece. It said, "Let us rap upon the box and see if he is alive." I said, "Hello?" Sure enough, 15 blocks off, in the museum gardens, were Brendan and Rick, discussing how they would tackle social services the next day. Perhaps I was hungry or thirsty, or my interior was excessively chilled from the icy trees, but what must have been the following 30 to 45 minutes passed without my realizing. What were we doing? What did we deliberate? Who joined us at the fountain? And why? Suddenly we were cycling home diligently, like our flat tires were high heels or tiptoes. A storm had begun to blow dust up off the ground, and some dustbins had fallen, the trash strewing itself incrementally the right way down a one-way street. That was my least interesting sound clip there. So it's all good from now on. This one's called an impeccable risotto. Don't go out on a night like this alone, she begged him, suddenly loud, in her pants, the giant spotlights they'd installed that summer casting dramatic shadows under her eyes and breasts. They had gorged on porridge because there was nothing else to eat or do, but they were nervous that the pyromaniacs who had gone for the east side of the conifer hedge 3 weeks last Sunday might have returned to the scene of the crime. There were some sounds outside that could have been anything. He was all out for going with his mag light, but she knew that this was unrealistic. Peter was no Vin Diesel. So she kissed him and put his hand on her breast, imploring that he stay, that they have an early night instead. Peter, angered, dashed it to the ground in rage. Her eyes filled with tears as she watched it die, flopping around like a fat young bass on the floor they had put in during the summer, instead of that shabby carpet, to raise the value of the house, when they thought it would be a good idea to sell shortly, before Peter lost his job because there was a recession caused by nonchalance, and the trees dropped their leaves, seemingly outraged. Mike and Annette's mansion. That morning there was a hare in front of the swimming pool in front of Mike and Annette's mansion. I carried the thought of it snugly about all day till evening, when I left it where I found it for the next day, hoping it would be a warm night, and if there were to be rain, that it would be light and refreshing and not frightening. The following day there was nothing to be seen of the hare, just the swimming pool, and behind Mike and Annette's mansion, an old cellist lumping his cello home after a night of relentless orchestration, and a postman plunging bills into letterboxes. The next day the pool was gone too, and the cellist must have been dead or something, and the wind conducted leaves off trees and commanded the odd obedient bird to charge past like a busy waitress, bringing songs instead of tea, or pizza, or champagne, or soup. There stood Mike and Annette's mansion. mansion, looking very big, and very white, and very big. The day after was a lovely day, but I felt guilty about what I had said to my wife the night before in bed about the houseplants and her hair. Walking home sheepishly, I forgot to check for the cellist or the hair. On the final day, it was just Mike and Annette at the end of the road in their dressing gowns, with all their kitchen appliances. Annette was looking very attractive and tanned. Mike was eating an egg. This one's called Social Change. It's about somebody. I wanted to write something about a person for whom bad things happen all the time. Sort of as a kind of an antidote for everybody who usually they just have bad days or bad months. So sort of somebody that you can think about and sort of inwardly celebrate that you're not Colin. Somebody who's eternally sort of courting misfortune. Colin sits on his stoop. The smell of the next street is overpowering. His team just lost the basketball, and there are insects, these insects that look like miniature scorpions, all over his house. His car sits in the street, bare of wheels. Somebody had them off in the night. The police only seem theoretically interested. Miffy, a neighbour, dining in Centre City's Chinese jewel of a restaurant, Panda Garden, enjoys a joke at his expense, with the two friends come buck buddies, Shane and Willie. Organising her apartment in upstate New York, Colin's wife, Mariella Delgado, she never changed her name, puts the divorce papers at the top of her to-do list. Ivan tips a fresh and eager delivery down at the Internal Revenue Service comes across some irregularities in Colin's tax records. Colin takes a call from his mother, Vera Cadwallader, who has just suffered a bad fall and has been receiving strange packages in the mail. She sighs a long, sad sigh. Colin, suddenly remembering the bath he was running, rushes in and up the stairs. Gorky, the house mastiff named after the Russian playwright, renowned for his thoughtful, eccentric theatre, flees the house through the open door in a delirious stupor of curiosity. Two young men enter as Colin deals with his mum in the bathroom. They take the TV and the DVD player, 6 or 7 family heirlooms, the beer in the fridge, and most of the cutlery. Colin, sweating in the ankle-deep hot water, drops the phone from between his moist ear and neck into the brimming bath. Downstairs, the sitting room seems strangely bare. He rushes outside, where a moment ago the evening had been just beginning, the sky brightening the buildings all around. Where was Gorky? The white noise of his tinnitus, revving like an engine in his mind. That was the sound of present-day industry in Philadelphia. This is my final poem. It's called Kite Mishap, and it's about epilepsy. We buy natiform sweet potatoes that resemble buttocks. We make cassoulet from natiform sweet potatoes. We kill the duck on a wet Tuesday. You toss your indigo coat over it and beat it against the tree. You have a favourite tree. I have a favourite car. You can't drive because of the epilepsy. I don't turn my phone off unless you're here. The first time it happened, you were eating a Bolivian custard apple fruit in the back of a pickup. You shook. The days that followed were full of the same questions. The sandflies around there wouldn't leave us alone. Now I eat sliced apple in my muesli. You take your medication from time to time. We get fruit flies in the kitchen and can't find a place where they breathe. On the days that neither of us work, we go to the park with a kite or a dog, sometimes both. It seems to snow less every year, you tell me, at the pond's edge. Snow nowhere to be seen. Thank you.
Everybody, Luke Yates.